I am super excited to be back in the chat room with you and have you here with me. It's another Saturday here on Doctor2Doctor in the chat room. And I thank you so much for coming back to hang out with me as you do every Saturday. And as I always say, I appreciate you because without you, there would be no Doctor2Doctor in the chat room. So thank you for coming back to take a listen every Saturday at 2 p.m. here on 94.7 FM. I hope you guys are doing well. As I always say, use those necessary precautions to stay safe. We know that COVID is trying to raise its head again. So do what you need to take care of yourself, take care of yourselves mentally. We know that this is Suicide Awareness Month. So make sure, just like you check on your physical being, that you are taking care of your mental being as well. Today, we're going to talk about something a little different. We're going to talk about family, but not that traditional family. We're going to talk about blended families, and we're going to talk about navigating through some of those challenges of meshing families together after divorce and remarriage. And we have just the person here in the chat room to talk us through some of the challenges and some of the tips of blended families today. We have Pastor Jerry Q Parries. He's a dynamic leader who presents God's word with encouragement and empowerment. He's an ordained minister under the leadership of Bishop Paul S. Morton. He delivers God's truth with an exceptional blend of inspiration, humor, and promotion of love. Pastor Parries is the founder and senior pastor of Christian Family Worship Center, House of Grace, located in Orlando, Florida. In addition to being a pastor, Pastor Parries also has a dynamic career in the gospel music industry. He is the founder of the award-winning record label Tehillah Music Group, which includes artists such as Bishop Paul S. Morton, Jonathan Reynolds, Full Gospel Baptist Church Fellowship, featuring BeBe Winans, Carr, and Byron Cage, among others. He is responsible for being executive producer of hit projects with Bishop Paul S. Morton, such as Let It Rain, we know that one, Seasons Change, Lord, whatever you're doing in this season, and Still Standing, just to name a few. Pastor Jerry Q Parries hired and worked with some of the best producers in the country, like Sanchez Hardy, Carr, Donald Lawrence, and Trent Phillips. In 2020, Pastor Jerry launched a new company called VRGOS, a virtual reality company where they help churches create a 360-degree experience of their worship service, and their members can view and virtually be inside the church from anywhere in the world. Wow. They also provide recording artists, authors, and actors a platform where they can reach millions of people through a new and exciting partnership in the VR world. He has been married to co-pastor Eunice Parries for more than 25 years and authored 2 books, Grace, the Real Good News of the Gospel, and The Making of a Blended Family. And we are honored and delighted to have Pastor Parries in the Doctor2Doctor chat room with us today. So glad to have you here in the chat room today, Pastor. I am just Rhonda. I am simply Rhonda.
Well, I'm delighted to meet you.
Absolutely. So, listen, I see that you and your wife have co-authored a book on blended families. I was reading an article, a Forbes article, um, and they were breaking down that statistic about all of marriages, half of all marriages end in divorce.
Yes.
And they were saying that in 2021, over 689,000 there were over 689,000 divorces. However, in that same year, there were 1.98 million marriages, which equated to like 6 in 1,000 of marriages, right? So there were more marriages than there were divorces. However, the statistic about over half of all marriages end in divorce came from the whole idea of those first marriages. But the
Yes.
second and third and fourth marriages, they fail at even a higher rate.
That is correct.
Yeah. So So because is that a piece of it? Blending the families, is that a piece of why we're seeing the divorce rate being what it is?
I would say yes. Blended families are extremely difficult.
Mm-hmm.
They're very challenging. You have a lot of dynamics uh,
Mm-hmm.
into a blended family. Uh, I when I met my wife, I had two children, and she had two children. And I like the way Carlton Pearson said it. It wasn't two people coming together, but two histories colliding. You know,
Wow. Mm-hmm.
and it was there was no books on blended family. We've been married now for 27 years, so
Yeah.
we got together. It was about 32 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no blended family books or anything pertaining to
Mm-hmm.
that. We had to learn as we went along, and
Mm-hmm.
man, did we have some challenges. And that's the reason I wrote the book, because when you come into a blended family, there's a lot of dynamics that you don't see, that you don't
Mm-hmm.
even pay attention to. I'll give you one example.
Mm-hmm.
When we joined together, uh, our daughter, which is her daughter, I call them my bonus children.
Yeah.
I don't use the word stepchildren. I believe in
Yeah.
bonus
I
children.
like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my bonus daughter, she was probably around 7 or 8 when I came into her life. And I remembered very vividly that she always had an attitude with me. And I was wondering, what what did I do? What could I say? And as I gotten older, and when I wrote the book, I talk about she didn't have an attitude with me. What she was doing is she could not navigate her real father with a stepfather. And so she was guarding her heart because she felt that she would betray her biological father by liking me.
Mm-hmm.
So if I took it, and which I did at the time, I took it as she had a problem with me, which had nothing to do with me. She was guarding her heart because she was trying to keep her father, her biological father, in that space. And I did not earn the right, or I was renting space. I did not
Mm-hmm.
have the opportunity to fully get into that space because I didn't have a relationship with her at the time. So it took time, and I mean years. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, she writes the foreword on our book, and
Wow.
she mentions it, that it took quite a while for me to garner some lease space in her heart. But
Mm-hmm.
please remember that it is lease; it is not own,
Yeah.
and
So
it was a challenge.
So tell me about that piece of when children are involved. Is there this magic number? You know, do you wait? 2 years? Do you wait 3 years? What? How do you how do you approach it differently when children are involved?
Well, I oftentimes say in a regular marriage, you have wife, husband, they are number one, children come second. In a blended family, it's a little different.
Mm,
Wife, husband, children come first.
yeah.
And what we end up doing, because and here's the reason why I say that, is because they did not ask for their parents to divorce.
Mm-hmm.
They did not ask for their parents to separate. So when they separate, the children are devastated. So when you come into a blended family, it is very important that the parents or the couple understand the trauma that the children are having.
Mm-hmm.
Those children must be placed first, in my opinion. I know some people say no, children, they come
Mm-hmm.
second. But
Mm-hmm.
in a blended family, it is vitally important to make sure that those children are first in how you deal. For an example, let me give you an example. When
Okay.
my children were in junior high school, they would have programs and they would have different things of that nature. Well, their father was very much involved in their lives.
Mm-hmm.
So when they had a program, I had to figure out my role. I could not come in and sit with their mother because they wanted their mother and their biological father to be their present.
Mm-hmm.
So She wanted me there with her. His whoever he was dating wanted to be there, but we made a conscious decision to let them sit together for the children's sake,
Mm-hmm.
because this is the children's program. This is
Mm-hmm.
not my time to say, well, I'm the man, I'm this. I have to
Yeah.
take a second role because they are the ones that are important. So what I did is I got a video camera and I started videotaping the event so that my place would be the videographer of
Mm-hmm.
these events, and
Mm-hmm.
let the mother and the father take their rightful place so that their children can be celebrated, and not bring the drama to the children's lives because they already have all of this drama from the divorce. Did that make sense?
It makes a world of sense, but do you know what a rarity that is? And do you guys know what an anomaly you are? Because most of the time it's polar opposite of that. People are feuding. And the children aren't considered, you know. And so I just wonder, how were you guys able to be so intentional about it? I love it. I love it. I love it being about, making the kids first and making it as least traumatizing for them as possible. I just don't know that most adults are adult enough to do that.
Well, probably from my experience, my mom and dad separated when I was 13 years old,
Okay.
and they went their separate ways, and with their new people,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of left me and my brothers and sisters kind of to fend for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And in the process of this, my mother's husband, he, Lester Hardy's gone at this moment, has passed on, but he would not allow my mother to really have a relationship with her children, and she went for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I thought that it was one of the most horrible, horrific things, because not only did I lose my parents, but I lost my mother,
Mm-hmm.
and to a degree, my father, by other people who came into their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that was unfair for a kid that's going through high school, junior high school, and those kind of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I just remembered that I mattered. And so I wanted to make sure that my children understood that they mattered,
Mm-hmm.
that my wife's children understood that they mattered,
Mm-hmm.
and that before I came into their lives, Christmas morning, every Christmas morning, their father would open up their gifts with them. Well,
Mm-hmm.
that tradition continued
Mm-hmm.
even after I came into the picture,
Mm-hmm.
because they deserve that. And I think the sensitivity of what I went through as a child just made me sensitive uh, to that degree. We moved away to New Orleans. Um, Kids were still in high school, uh, but I would, and this is not a badge of honor. This is just how we ran our household.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Realize that some people frown on this, what I'm getting ready to say.
Mm-hmm.
But my children's father, when he came to New Orleans, could stay at our house
Mm-hmm.
because that's their father.
Mm-hmm.
They deserve to have that intimate relationship with him. And I
Mm-hmm.
need to be big enough
Mm-hmm.
to handle that, or
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any business being married to somebody with children.
So how has that helped the children develop over time? How did that impact their development over time?
Now
Being able to do that.
that's a whole another question, because children, and this is after I wrote the book, by the way.
Okay.
Children have a tendency to view things out of their own perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do everything right that you think is right,
Mm-hmm.
and they can view it wrong.
Okay.
You know, um, my children, as they get older with their children, and some of them have experienced the same divorce from their first mates, because my kids are in their 40s now.
Yeah.
They have a little bit more compassion
Mm-hmm.
about decisions that had to be made.
Yeah.
However, when we were in it,
Mm-hmm. Not
as
so
much as
not so
we,
much.
yeah, children see things out of their own view.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they could see your very presence of that as uh, everybody does it. It becomes normal for them, so
Mm-hmm.
they don't see it as you did something special. You did what you were supposed to do,
Mm.
and
I
it
get
does.
that a lot, and it's not even about that, but I get that a lot.
Yeah, it doesn't come across as I'm grateful
Yeah.
that you thought enough of us to
Mm-hmm.
do this.
Mm-hmm.
It comes across more so as what was you supposed to do?
So
That's
what?
yeah, so
Yeah.
what?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to eat that
Mm-hmm.
because that's just the nature of what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know that you've done what you were supposed to do. Only time will let them know that you've done what you're supposed to do.
When your daughter wrote the forward to your book,
Mhm.
did did you know? I mean, did she talk about? Did you guys talk through it, or did she just write it and then the two of you got to read it?
She wrote it, and the two of us got to read it.
What did you think once you read it?
I was floored. I don't know if you had an opportunity to see the
No,
photo.
I am going to though.
May I read it? It's only
Absolutely,
it's only a it's only a paragraph.
absolutely, you can.
Okay. She says this is my book, Blended Families here. The
Okay,
Making of a Blended Family.
okay.
She says, suddenly in the summer of 1993, we were a blended family. Jerry Q Parries moved in. Jason and Justin were coming up for the summer. We had just left my childhood home and moved into a 3-bedroom apartment in another city, away from my friends, parents. We were getting a divorce, and bam, and now I have 2 brothers and a new dad. Forming that into a sentence today pretty much sums up my attitude about the whole thing. I was angry, confused, shocked, and I showed it towards my new family. I spent about 7 years being mean and hateful. I
Mm,
agree. 7 years of being disrespectful, but despite all of that, you always loved me. You were always kind and still took my hateful self on vacation. This blended family wasn't by far easy, and it took over 10 years. 10 years. Let me say that
wow.
again. For me to claim you as my father and to love you as such. Wow.
Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow. Gonna talk more. We're at a break. We will be right back on Doctor in the chat room on 94.7 FM. We are still here on Doctor in the chat room on 94.7 FM. We're talking to Pastor Jerry Parries.
That is correct.
Yay! I messed it up so bad, man. So glad to have you though, and what a great discussion this is. So, how did your blended family come about? Like, walk us through like how did you guys get there? Going through the divorces. I mean, like, how did you come together? What were the discussions like when you got to a point of, hey, I think we want to be husband and wife, and how do we make this happen?
Oh, well, I write in my book how to choose a mate for your blended family.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first chapter. Um, and one of the things that my sister always used to say to me, she worked in the psychiatry
Mm-hmm.
department a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
She used to say to me, never watch how someone treat you. Always watch how they treat others, and that will tell you how they really are.
Mm.
And from that, she says, when you go out to eat, see how they treat the waitress, because
Mm-hmm.
people always put on the front for you.
Mm.
but it's how they treat other people. See how they talk on the telephone to their mate, to their ex, to their
Okay.
mother,
Mm-hmm.
and that will tell you the kind of person that you have. So
Mm-hmm.
never look at how they treat you.
But
Always look at
others.
how they treat others,
Okay.
and that will tell. So, in the process of that, when you're picking a mate, and as we picked a mate, I looked at how my wife treated her ex-husband.
Okay.
I wanted to know what she said about him,
Mm-hmm.
how she lifted him up in front of the children or dogged
Mm-hmm.
him out.
Mm-hmm.
She always lifted him up. I wanted to see how she treated her children, would give me an indication that, well, she may treat my children the same way, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So if you meet a guy and he's not taking care of his children, his biological children,
Mm.
what makes you think he's going to take care of your children?
Mm.
So in choosing someone, you want to look at what they're doing in their lives now. There's a statement that we always say: men marry women thinking they will never change. Women marry men thinking they can change them.
Mm. That's so true.
Yeah. And generally, what ends up happening, because they're not having a relationship with their biological children, when
Mm-hmm.
you meet them,
Mm-hmm.
you think that they are going to have a relationship with your children.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're not, yeah, and so if you get the point,
I
if
do.
if a person is not a great person to other people,
Mm-hmm.
eventually they won't be a great person to you. My wife, who happens to be sitting next to me, just
Hello,
happens.
wife and co-pastor.
Happens to be an incredible person.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I said, I wish you would have been my mother.
Oh,
I
wow.
knew then that this was the woman that I would have wanted to be a part of my children.
Mm-hmm.
A couple things happened though when we got married is because I was the kind of dad that my kids stayed up
Mm-hmm.
all night. They'd be up
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I was a single man.
Yeah.
My wife comes in, or at the time was my girlfriend, comes into my life and says, "Hey, you really need to put your kids on a schedule.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they need to go to bed early, get up early, this free for all is not good for children."
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, I never thought about it. I'll do it. So I started telling my kids they had to go to bed early. Now this goes back to the blended family.
Yeah.
My kids all of a sudden wanted to have a meeting with me.
Mm-hmm.
They set me down and they say, "Dad, you've changed since you met Eunice."
I was just about to ask how you talked about your wife's daughter and how she struggled. It's like let's look at the other side. Go ahead.
My oldest son, Jason, still struggles to this day.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in his 40s.
Mm-hmm.
Hope we don't see this. But
Uh-huh.
but if he does, he struggles even from today. He'll say, "I
Mm-hmm.
don't, Dad, I don't." But
Mm-hmm.
he struggles from today. It was like you changed when you met Eunice. Well,
Mm-hmm.
she enlightened me on how to be a better parent.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that I was doing it because she told me to do it. I did it because I
It
got
was
better
right to do.
information
Mm-hmm.
to raise
Mm-hmm.
my children.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't like the discipline of it. And
Mm-hmm.
so from that, because I became more structured as a father,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't like it because I was a free for all dad. And they blamed her
Mm.
for the reason of my structure.
Makes sense.
And it wasn't her. I was doing it because she told me. I did it because the information made sense.
And how did you handle it?
I constantly telling them, here's the reason why we're doing what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
You need this. But again, kids, at the end of the day, they take the information and they choose to
They
believe it,
process it in their own way.
process it in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
And I love this statement. Your truth may be your truth, but may not be ultimate truth. But
Mm.
it's truth for you.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's truth for you, and you build your relationships off of that truth,
Mm-hmm.
it's very difficult for you to receive ultimate truth because you have made up in your mind that that truth is the truth. And
Did you?
children, and our children, as any other children, I've done it with my mother.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I look at my mother now. Me and my mother have a great relationship now. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness have taken place. I love
Mm-hmm.
her with all.
Awesome.
In fact, my sisters are taking care of my mom. She has dementia,
Mm-hmm.
and they took care of her husband
Mm-hmm.
at the same time. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the grace of God and the love of Jesus in our heart
Mm-hmm.
causes us to do many things that we
Yeah.
would normally do. Having
Mm-hmm.
said that, I have a set of thoughts of the way my mother was that is my truth, but may not be ultimate truth.
Wow. Now that's deep. Okay. I'll leave that there. That's pretty deep. Um, were there these rules that were set? Did you have to come up with rules, different rules for different situations in different houses? Was it kind of chaotic, or did you guys come to some sense of management about it, with them being, with their dad, with their mom, with.
Yeah, at the beginning it was very chaotic because I suggest in the book that if two people get together, they need to find a new place
Mm, okay,
because
speak to that.
because when I moved in with my wife,
Mm-hmm.
she had two bedrooms,
Mm-hmm.
well, three bedrooms. Each child had their own room,
Mm-hmm.
and she had her room.
Mm-hmm.
So when my kids came in, they were coming into their room.
Hmm.
So when the situation happened, you would hear, "Get out of my room,
Mm-hmm.
get out of my space,"
Mm-hmm.
and they had no space
Yeah.
because they were coming into a house that was already established before they got there.
Mm-hmm.
That creates a lot of problems
Mm-hmm.
because there is no neutral ground to build a family on.
Mm.
So when we moved and we moved into our new house, it was neutral ground. There was no room. That's not your room or your room. We were able to assign rooms to two people
Mm-hmm.
or person, and this is
They
the
have their
boys' room,
space.
and
Mm-hmm.
everybody had equal space because nobody was able to claim it before we
Mm-hmm.
got there.
Mm.
So at the beginning, we ran into a lot of problems because we had to constantly say, "This is no longer your room," but they didn't receive that. you know. And then when their father came over, it was, "Here's what these children are doing to me." And then when they would get with their mother, "Here's what these children are doing to me."
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the parents would call, their father would call her, my ex-wife would call me. Why are her children treating?
Mm-hmm.
And we're saying, where's all this coming from?
Mm-hmm.
But we eventually was able to get them to understand, and it took time.
Mm-hmm.
10 years. I mean, it takes time
Mm-hmm.
to constantly grind and keep it together. I write a chapter in my book called "The Cinderella Syndrome,"
Mm-hmm.
that you have to be very careful as a blended family parent that you don't come in just for the sake of this conversation and cause the stepchildren to clean the kitchen all the time while
Mm-hmm.
you let your children sit down and do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to always be conscious that what you do for one, you got to do for all. And it's very difficult because mama want daughter time,
Mm-hmm.
mom and daughter time. But when stepsons see how mama is treating daughter, but don't
Mm-hmm.
treat him with the same "take me out to dinner," uh, so dad got to now step up and take you out to dinner so that you don't feel it. Just it
So,
is.
so how do you ensure that everyone feels like they're on an even playing field? Treated fairly. Nobody's feeling excluded or left out.
Well, the one thing that we did, um, and you can stick your head in here and mention it too. Uh, uh, the one thing that we did is we laid out a schedule,
Okay.
housekeeping schedule.
Mm-hmm.
So we divided up the housework. So on Monday you do this, Tuesday you do this, Wednesday you do this, third, and but the matter of there was the smallest child who was like 6 or 7 who could not do what the
Mm-hmm.
13-year-olds did.
Mm-hmm.
So he always was the baby, her baby of the family.
Mm-hmm.
So no matter what we did, he was always, y'all let him get away with it.
Yeah.
It's just unavoidable. It's the Brady Bunch for real, unavoidable. But that's one way that we
Mm-hmm.
do it.
Mm-hmm.
The second way that we do it is, and this became a little bit more difficult, is on Christmas, if we all buy 3 gifts apiece for each child,
Mm-hmm.
that's okay until they go to their dad's house, who give them 10 gifts.
Wow.
And they come home with 13 gifts,
Mm-hmm.
but my kids only have 3 gifts apiece. So when we know we had to talk that through. How many gifts are you planning on giving?
Mm-hmm.
So that if he's planning on giving 10, then I got to get an extra 10 possibly for my kids,
Mm-hmm.
so that at the end of the day, everybody ends up with 13.
Yeah.
It's just complicated.
Yeah.
It's difficult because you don't want the children to feel at the end of the day. And if you got a father like they had, who is very much into their lives, their mother was in Memphis. So I had to do double duty to make sure that I covered the same amount, which I
Mm-hmm.
didn't mind doing.
Mm-hmm.
But they still, it's still, from children's point of view, they're always going to find something at the end of the day to say it's not
What
fair.
was it a strain on your marriage in any way? I mean, did you guys find yourselves in a strain?
But at times I believe we were. There were
Mm-hmm.
times that I would say, and just to be honest, that
Mm-hmm.
I think that you're treating your children different than you're treating my children.
Mm-hmm.
And we made a pact, though. We had to go in the back room and talk about it.
Right. Never in front of the
We
children.
never talked about it in front of the children that we could remember.
Right.
We had to go in the
Mm-hmm.
back and say, you can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I know he's your baby, but you gotta
Mm-hmm.
you gotta come up on this.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that wasn't pretty,
Mm-hmm.
you know. Sometimes, and depending on what the situation was, sometimes it was cost for it, that you had to do something more for the other one,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
depending
Yeah.
on what it is. My wife used to always tell me, we can't treat people equal when they're different people.
I agree. I agree, wife.
And I'm saying, I'm the equal guy, though.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the equalizer. If I give you
Uh-huh.
4 grapes, you got to have 4 grapes. And we battle with that. And she would constantly say, they're not
Yeah.
the same children.
Mm-mm.
And I'm saying, but no, you got to treat them the same. So that was a battle, and continues to be with our grandkids.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Talk about the grandkids. Talk about that chapter in your book.
Yeah, right.
He can't talk about them yet. We're gonna stay here.
Yeah,
He can't talk. We gotta talk about the grandkids, but he can't do it yet because we don't have but about a minute and a half to break. So I know we need more than
Yeah.
that.
It is complicated. It is not for the faint of heart. It is
Right.
Right. If you want to keep your marriage together.
and you got to constantly go back. I even down, if I have a few more minutes here,
Yeah.
even down to disciplining the children. Oh, I write about that in the book. Vitally important. I made the huge mistake of disciplining my daughter one time, and I come from the generation that you spank
Mm-hmm.
and all. And I put my hands on my bonus daughter. Oh, what did I do that for? And she's close to her daddy too. Oh, it was about to be a war up in there.
On and popping, as the kids say.
Give me a reason. I've been waiting on a reason to take this to the next level. And I learned from it. Almost destroyed our home. My wife backed me up, and this is what happened in this. But I want to talk about this a little bit more. What happened was my wife's husband's mother and sisters stepped in and supported me.
Wow.
And that's what saved it. Because my daughter was totally wrong. But I learned from that. And here's what I learned. Whoever is the biological parent is the person that gives the directive.
Right.
For an example, my wife comes in and tells my daughter, I want you to clean the kitchen. She can say that. I can say, didn't your mother say? I can back her up. Didn't your mother say clean the kitchen? But if I come in and I tell my bonus daughter, clean the kitchen, what is the famous word she's going to tell me?
You ain't my daddy.
You ain't my daddy. And now I got to react. And that's what happened. And from that, we've learned, if you want my biological children to do something, come and tell me secretly. I will come out there and tell them publicly, and you can back me up and say, didn't your dad say to do A, B, C, D, F, G? But if I give the directive, and so in a blended family, the directive must come from the biological parent. If it comes from the step parent, you're in for trouble, because now you got to deal with their daddy and their mama and their cousins and their aunts, especially if they don't like you.
Listen, we're going to talk about the grandbabies when we come back from break. We're going to break this book down a little bit. Y'all got to get this book. And I want the audience rather to hear, because I've done my research, a little bit about your music career. We will be back in a moment on Doctor2Doctor in the chat room on 94.7 FM. We are back on 94.7 FM, still here with Pastor Jerry Parries. And I tell you, this is such a great conversation about blended families. Now, time for the grandkids, the grandchildren.
Before we get to the grandchildren, there's something I want to share that's left in the book here that I think is vitally important. Hospital visits. What happens if one of your children get in the hospital? What happens if one of the family members die? How do you handle all of that?
Family reunions,
the whole night. We had an incident where my son was in college and he had an issue and he had to go to the hospital. I'll cut it short.
No.
When we went to the hospital, went back in the operating room, his biological dad is there. His bonus mom for her husband's wife, me and the wife are there. We're all concerned about our son. The doctor comes out and says, only the parents can go back. Well, who is he talking to? we parents, their parents. I had to learn that I had to take a seat back and let mama and the ex-husband, his dad, go to see about his son. Because ultimately, he is the one that is most important, not my ego at this time. And after I sat back, the dad came out and say, hey, Ryan wants to see you. And now our relationship is wonderful. We have a blended family, great relationship. His mom calls me her son. His sisters call me their brother, but that took work. And I mean, I don't think me and him are lovey-dovey, but we have honorable and respect for each other. Cordial.
What about his wife? Was it difficult to for her to mesh with this whole new blended family thing? Did she have her own kids as well?
I don't think she have any
No, she didn't
children.
have any children. Yeah,
I don't really know.
but she came in so late.
Yeah, but she came in so late.
She came in late.
I don't really know because I didn't get into their home.
Mm-hmm.
So when my kids went over there,
Mhm.
whatever they did over there was whatever they did over there.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make sure that my house was welcoming to all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know what their relationship is. Even to this day, I know they're cordial, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what their relationship is. I do know that my children spend a lot of time. Well, my daughter lives here in Orlando with me, and my
Mm-hmm.
son, and my oldest son lives here with me. My youngest son lives with his mother in Memphis, and my youngest son lives with his dad in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm.
But we seem to all have a great time together from that perspective.
Yeah. So another life event is grandkids. Let's
Yes.
talk about the grandchildren. What is that
Oh, it
like?
was a game changer. The
Yeah.
grandchildren was a game changer
Wow.
because the grandchildren came and actually the first one that had the grandchild child was my daughter,
Mm-hmm.
who when she had the grandchild, we were not in good terms.
Mm-hmm.
But for some odd reason, this little boy, when he came out, just smiled at me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I I mean, I took him and spoiled him rotten. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he stinks even today. He stinks even today. If he was here, he stays
He lives
with me
with
now.
us.
He still live with me.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it was just a brand new life. And I
Mm-hmm.
think what happened with my daughter, this is my opinion. She saw how I loved on her baby,
Mm-hmm.
and it warmed her heart.
Mm.
Yeah. He My grandchildren feels like they don't feel bonus or anything. I really see my grandchildren as my grandchildren. I
Yeah.
forget sometimes that I am not the biological grandfather.
Yeah.
I think they forget. They don't even think about it.
Mm-hmm.
They
Papa.
this pawpaw,
Mm-hmm.
and I can tell by how they reach in my pockets all the time.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
are game changers.
Oh,
Yes,
they're
they
changing.
are.
Yeah.
It was a life changing moment for us. Um,
Mm-hmm.
as he gets older, because we made him so rotten. I told my wife this is a profound statement I want to make to all of our people in the audience.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we can go overboard thinking we can do better than the parents,
Mm. You
but
better say it.
the parents are anointed to raise their own children.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Grandparents are anointed to love, not to raise children.
Mm.
You can raise them and ruin them
Mm-hmm.
when their parents can raise them to become productive citizens.
Wow.
And
That's a word.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think TD Jakes said this the other day. I heard it. I hope I quoted right. Great men produce weak seed.
Mm.
And he said, great men produce weak seed because great men had to hustle and make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And they got seed and decided they didn't want their seed to
Right.
suffer what they suffered.
Woo!
And they gave them more
Come on now.
than what they should have. And we have produced weak seed. Grandparents are
Sometimes.
weak seed
Yeah.
sometimes
Mom and Daddy, y'all listening?
to children who need their parents.
And my parents are going to yell back at me and ask me, am I listening when it comes to my grandkids? But I promise you, that's a word that I receive. And I really do. I receive that word because guilty, guilty,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
totally guilty.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm guilty. I'm
Yeah,
guilty.
we are guilty.
And we are guilty.
Yes.
And if I could go back and do it over,
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I would leave him where he was supposed to be
Mm-hmm.
and let him suffer that out so that it could have developed him into what he needed to be. I remember a story. I remember a story one time of the story of a little kid was outside playing, and he saw a caterpillar, and he saw him struggling to be a butterfly. So he went and he cut the caterpillar out of the cocoon, and the caterpillar died.
Yeah.
And he cried and went to his grandfather, and his grandfather came out and said, "Why are you crying?" He says, "Because I tried to help this caterpillar and I wasn't able to save him." He said, "What do you do?" He said, "I cut him out of the cocoon." The grandfather said, you made the mistake, because when the caterpillar is struggling to get out of the cocoon, he's building his strength to fly. If you cut him out, you don't give him the opportunity to
disrupt the process. Wow.
We disrupt
That's right.
Grandparents can disrupt the process for their grandchildren to fly.
I have no words other than guilty. Other than guilty. So kind of summarize the book for us. Tell us where we can get the book. And then we want to talk a little bit about the music. Kind of walk us through the book so we know what to expect.
Well, you've kind of heard it. We deal with how to choose a mate. We deal with what is a blended family, how to choose a partner.
What are some of the key things on choosing the mate? Just a couple of things.
Just like I say, watch how they treat others. Determines how they treat you. You know, go in with your eyes wide open. We have a tendency to want so much that we close our eyes to what is really there. Open your eyes. That's really is not hidden from you. You just decided to ignore it.
Okay.
You know, so make sure that the person that you're choosing is good for your children, because he's good to his own children. Or if he doesn't have children, make sure he treats his mother right. You know, sisters right. See how he treats his other women. See how he talks about his ex. Ask him what happened. You do know that it ain't all her or him. It's both. You know, see, does he give a fair assessment of that? And those kind of things. But the book is good. The book is good. It is.
Yeah.
It is something that.
So how did all of the children build did they bond? Did they eventually bond and build their own relationships with each other? The children from both sides, your children, your wife's children.
My wife says yes. I still think it is a work in progress. They still think it's a work in progress. When children, again, have their view of things, it can flow over into the relationships, and they see things that are not true. And sometimes they can't let it go. You know, and so I think sometimes here's what I saw in crisis. They come together real quick, but in everyday life, it's I don't want to be bothered with them. I don't want, you know, they still they everybody's still
siloed.
Yeah, it is what it is. Yes, they did. Yes, they are good together, but it's still a work in progress.
Are there has there ever been counseling? Was that ever a piece of the puzzle?
I think me and my wife did.
And the kids did too.
Did they?
Yeah, when they were early teenage years.
She said we did counseling.
Right,
early teenage. I don't remember.
Yeah, when they were teenagers, we did counseling.
I don't remember. She said we did. I don't remember. Should you? Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
150%. You should do counseling if you're in a regular marriage. You should just do
counseling. Yeah, you should.
You should just do counseling, period. It is just good to talk it out.
It's good to pray and seek therapy. Yeah.
All of us need counseling.
Yes.
Guess what? Sunday morning service is counseling. That's why we're there. You know?
So do you guys still have goals set for your blended family? Are there things that you're still working on, or are you now at a place where you're allowing things to just organically happen?
I'm at a place as of the day to organically let it happen. I'm sick of them.
It's the laugh in the background for me.
so bad.
I'm sick of them.
We still try to get together on holidays and
No.
weddings and
Honestly, every once in a while, I'll have a place in my heart to take everybody on vacation with us.
Mm-hmm.
But then when I do, I realize I need to let them go.
Just let it go. Let go, let God.
Let it go, let it go. They wear me out. My children wear me out. I love every last one of them,
Oh
but
my
they
gosh.
wear me out. And now the
Uh,
grandchildren are starting to wear me out.
Okay.
yeah. So let's talk a little bit about when I introduced you. I talked about your ties with Bishop Paul Morton and some of your music. Let's talk about that. I know that's off the subject, but we cannot leave today without you telling us a little bit about your music career.
Yeah, I started, Bishop Morton came to me. Well, first of all, I was an artist back in Cleveland, Ohio. I'm from Cleveland. I had
Mm-hmm.
albums that were on Billboard magazine and all of the above. And I became very good friends with an artist, anybody that's no history of gospel music. I became a good friend with an artist by the name of Thomas Whitfield.
Yeah.
Me and Thomas Whitfield were best friends.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, and when Thomas died, he was going to marry Gwen Morton, which is Bishop Paulus Morton's sister.
Okay.
She moved back to New Orleans, and then about 8 or 9 years later, she called me and said, "Hey, we need a musician, and I know that you play and all of that. Would
Mm-hmm.
you come move to New Orleans?"
Mm-hmm.
And so I moved to New Orleans, and in about a year, I became the minister of music for Greater St. Stephen,
Mm-hmm.
Bishop Morton's ministry. And then Bishop Morton approached me and asked me, because he knew of my background in the music industry, would I create a record label for him?
Mm-hmm.
And I created and developed and built from ground up the Tehillah Music Group label.
Mm-hmm.
We signed Jonathan McReynolds to
Mm-hmm.
that label. And then we did all of his music.
Mm-hmm.
Let It Rain, the hit album Let It Rain. I was the executive producer on that. The one
Mm-hmm.
that he did with Aretha Franklin, Seasons Change.
Yeah.
I was the executive, all of it. Cry Your Last Tear, whatever you're
Mm-hmm.
doing in this season, don't do it without me.
Yeah.
All of his hits, all of his hits. We won several Stellar Awards and I Grammy. Well, we got Grammy nominations, but Stellar Awards, Doves. I hired great producers like Sanchez Hardy, Kurt Carr. We did the Still Standing album,
Mm.
incredible album. Donald Lawrence. Um, we did an album with him, and we did some incredible music, and that
Mm-hmm.
still is classics today. And so that was my music career. I did it for about 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I managed him for a while. Still very close. And every once in a while, I get a call about something musically. They say, "Give it to Jerry, let him handle it."
Yeah.
We're still in it, but not full time like I was before. But it was incredible, incredible music, incredible records and songs. And Bishop Morton is just an incredible man of God, incredible singer. He's an
Yes.
incredible preacher. So now I moved from doing records and now I'm traveling all over the country, all over the world. I'm actually doing now, bringing groups to different. I took people to Dubai 2 weeks ago. We took
Mm-hmm.
60 people to Dubai for vacation. They went home. We took 62 people to Egypt. So I do traveling where I'm taking people all over the world to see the world. And that's what God is having me do right now. And it's just been an amazing. We took 60 people to London and Paris. In May, we're going to Greece. 50 people have already signed up to go to Greece with us to do the tour
Wow.
of the islands. So we just do, that's what God has us doing.
And you pastor, right?
And I pastor.
Wow. And all of that music that you named, we play it here on 94.7. So it's an honor to meet you. It's an honor to meet you, Pastor Eunice, and to have had this discussion. What a great discussion. And I do hope that you guys will come back. Tell us right quick where we can get the book,
You can
because
get
I
the
can't
book
wait to get it.
You can get it on Amazon.
Yes.
Hmm.
Just go to Amazon and put in The Making of a Blended Family. I also have another book on there called Grace, the Good News of the Gospel.
We mentioned that in the intro. Yeah.
Yeah, another book that I
Uh-huh.
wrote. That you'll run out of sin before God runs out of grace. God
Mm.
took all of his anger out on Jesus so that he could release all of his love on you.
And
And
so, guys, if you're looking for his book on Amazon, the last name is P like Paul, Arries.
that is
That's
Mhm.
cool.
Jerry Q Parries.
Harry's, yes.
Parries.
Yeah. Or you can
Please
email
go.
me. You can
Okay.
email me at Jerry, Jerry, Q as in quality, II at yahoo.com. And I'll be more than
Awesome.
happy to send you the book and take care of it from there.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. It's an
Thank
honor
you.
to have met you. Great discussion. Guys, we will see you back here next Saturday. Same chat channel, same chat time, right here on Doctor to Doctor in the chat room on 94.7 FM. We will see you then.